All right, I'm going to walk you through the PowerPoint for the hip and pelvis notes. All right, so starting out with the hip and pelvis, like I showed you in the anatomy picture video, is made up of a lot of bones. All right, 3 of the bones are fused together to make up the pelvis, and then you have the ball of the femoral head that goes into the socket that actually makes up the hip joint. Right, so the pelvis is 3 innominate bones. That means that they are fused together, and that is the ilium, which is the widest part, the pubis, which is the front, and the ischium, which is the back, which is what you sit on. All right, the acetabulum accepts the femoral head. So if we look back at the pelvis here, the acetabulum is this crescent-shaped moon part in the socket where the femoral head sits. The acetabulum is the joint. All right? The joint is very stable but not very mobile, which is why you cannot make a full revolution with your hip like you can your shoulder. All right, inside the acetabulum you have the labrum. The labrum is the cartilage. So if we look here, here's the acetabulum, looks like a crescent moon, and then all around in this artistic impression you have the cartilage. What this does is it helps to deepen the surface, so when that femoral head is in socket, it is very stable. All right, the longest and strongest bone in the body is the femur. It is almost completely covered by muscle where you cannot palpate the bone at all, except down in the knee and at the greater trochanter. So if we look here and we think of our skin and our muscle being on top of this, we cannot palpate any of this except when we bend the knee. We can palpate down here at the condyles, and then we can also palpate right here at the greater trochanter. Everything else is covered. So what is the greater trochanter? It's an important attachment for muscles that abduct, which means it pulls the leg away from the midline. All right, the lesser trochanter is for the iliopsoas. The iliopsoas is a deep muscle within our abdominal cavity that helps to keep us in neutral spine. The femoral head, it is covered by cartilage and it goes into the joint, and then the femoral neck has an angle on it. If you look back at this picture here, you notice there's an angle and the bone tapers inward, and that angle of inclination is important because it helps with either widening or shortening of the hip, and it creates an overhang system, which is important for muscle pull and where our muscles insert around the hip. The pubic symphysis is the front. The pubic symphysis, very little compression and rotation. All right, the bones are separated by a fibrocartilaginous disc. This disc right here is like a ligament. So like always with women, whenever they are giving birth, their ligaments become lax or loose, and that allows for a little degree of separation right here, which is also why they tell women after birth don't do a lot of strenuous activities, because all these ligaments right here that are shaded green, they're loose. And so the pelvic girdle has to go back to normal position, and sometimes it can be off track if you go back too soon to exercise after giving birth. All right, the SI joint, SI stands for sacroiliac. So sacrum and ilium. All right, so this is going to be on the back side. Our sacroiliac joints are right here on the back. Sacrum is a triangular shaped bone that goes down to the tip of the coccyx. All right, our inguinal ligament. Our inguinal ligament is very important for hip stability. It goes from the ASIS, which is the front of the hip, down to the pubic symphysis. Easiest way to palpate that is think of where your underwear line is in the front. The femoral triangle. Femoral triangle is very important when you're looking at the lower leg and lower leg injuries, so you can figure out where the femoral pulse is. Your femoral artery runs through the triangle, so right here. All right, so this artery runs through. So if you get shot or stabbed in the hip, in the front, you could actually bleed out because the femoral artery is the one of the largest arteries in the body. So this femoral triangle is made up of the sartorius muscle coming down the front of the thigh, the adductor, we're adding it to the body, so it's the inside. So this would be the pubic symphysis right here, and then our inguinal ligament up top. So right within here you have the pulse. Right? Typically I would have you make note cards with the range of motion, but for purposes of us being at home now, you can copy this chart down, you can memorize this chart. It is part of your unit test. If you have note cards at home, I would suggest making note cards. Put the motion on the front, put the range of motion and the muscle that moves it on the back so you could study that way. If not, just completely do the chart. And those are your guided notes. If you have any questions, let me know. And hopefully this helps you to fill out your note packet.